snapping around episode 6 here, and guys, we took a week off. Not a whole lot has happened since we last recorded anyway, unless we count all the number of injuries that have since happened to the Avalanche since we last recorded. I mean, at this point, it's getting pretty ridiculous when your entire forward group is made up of 3 top 6 forwards and then a bunch of AHL players pretty much.
Yeah, it's been pretty tough to watch. Almost every game, someone else seems to go on the IR, and they're finally starting to get some guys back a bit sooner than, well, I guess not sooner, but the timeline's up for some of them, which is nice because they're hurting.
Lakinen's back tonight for the game against Seattle here, which is gonna really help at least put. By the sounds of it, he's getting put in beside McKinnon and Rantanen, so that top line gets put back together. And I mean, Middlestad's done such a beauty job in that 2C role early on this season that, I mean, like, guys, this may be the biggest. I want to almost call him an off-season acquisition, even though he was a trade deadline pickup last year. Just having Middlestat in that 2C role, like having him cemented there, that you didn't even have to worry about it in the offseason to try to find anyone.
Yeah. Unfortunately, when one solution to a problem comes, another one arises, as this season has just so beautifully been.
You kind of nailed it there, Trav. Like, the goaltending at the start of the season when the Avs were 80% healthy shit the bed, and now that it seems to be turning around, now they can't stay healthy. So
I just want to point out too, I had a hard time keeping it together because I was waiting for the intro music to replay when you were doing your introduction again. I was so sure you were going to do it again, but good work. We're getting better.
I purposely fixed that so it's inside the actual intro video. It's not a separate file now. So I'm thinking. So yeah. Because I really didn't want to make that 3 straight weeks in a row of the music playing again.
I was looking forward to it.
Yeah. The only thing I need to change now is how long the intro is. It ran a little long. We were talking on a black screen for a bit. But I mean, well, fuck. We can joke about that. We can joke about YouTube matching sweaters, even though you swore you didn't plan it.
JC swears. we planned it.
Yeah.
Just representing the town of Paisley.
Oh yeah.
That's right.
There you go. Gotta represent. The nice Avalanche maroon color too.
I want to just throw out a quick question before we start bouncing into other topics at you guys. Do you guys think Ovi's going to break the record this year with the pace that he's on right now? Because I'm starting to believe he is. I had no belief at the season start, but I've kind of changed my tune here.
It's hard to deny that he won't do it this year if he doesn't even have to keep up at this pace, but like if he drops off just a tad, because the pace he's on right now is ridiculous, but like he only needs 42 this year now, or 35 more, I think, right?
35, I think, to be clear. I think 34 to tie.
I mean, there's 60 some games left, like 68, 69 games left that they have. Like, yeah, like it's way more believable now than it certainly was before game number 1 was played.
I feel, and Trav, you kind of jumped out of me. I was actually going to swing us into this later on, but we'll jump to the Caps and Ovi now here. I think just with how they've played and Ovi's just made such a career of that power play 1T spot with a playmaker like Strome now in that Capitals lineup and having a full year under his belt from last year, just learning Ovi's style. I do think he'll do it, but I want to counter this with a question. What do you guys think's better? Does he do it late in the season, even if the Caps are maybe out of a playoff spot by then, where the games don't really matter as much for them? Or would it be better for them to try to push the record breaking goal to like the start of the next season?
I would say as soon as possible. I think it's still a monumental moment regardless of where they sit.
Yeah, I agree with Trav. I think it doesn't really matter when it gets done. Like the sooner it gets done is probably the best for him and the record book in general. But I mean, it's just nice to see him kind of playing a bit better compared to last year. Like he looks a bit better out there, honestly. Like, there's times where last year he looked like he was just kind of dogging it and he was just kind of out there for the power play goals. But he's looking a bit more active in the play in most games that I've seen. Not every game, but most games. And it's showing with kind of how improved the Capitals are just to start this year.
I think that's it. Is their GM went out this offseason and the Caps surprised everyone, snuck into the playoffs, got their asses handed to them by the Rangers, but they basically went out this offseason and said, okay, like a shit year last year and we still snuck into the playoffs. Why can't we we'll take on a few projects, but obviously like Ovi probably had a discussion with them after the playoff exit and said, just put a few more pieces around us that can maybe help make a difference. And it seems to, like you said, it helps energize Ovi. That or he got into a lot of the Russian gas over the summer.
I think this start that Ovi's been on has been everything in terms of the record. Like I think at the start of this year, like I was pretty confident, but there was a sliver of me that thought if he started this year the same way as last year, that maybe he doesn't break this record. Just because, he's not getting any younger. None of us are, right? So, if he had a similar start as he did last year, I can't see him swinging another 30 goal season, but now I have a hard time believing he's not at least getting 30 this year, if not the record. And you mentioned Dylan Strome too there, Brock. I'm really happy to see that he's finally turning into the player that everybody expected him to be, and maybe a bit of a late bloomer, but he's been the centerman, the centerman that the Caps were hoping for since the absence of Backstrom and Kuznetsov.
Well, it gets into, we talked about it earlier this season in the episodes, like with Byfield and Lafreniere and a lot of those drafts. Like, yeah, Strome's way back in 2015, but like so many kids can dominate junior hockey. And as soon as you put them into a professional setting where, regardless of their talent level, they're asked to do so much more on both ends of the ice. Not every kid transitions that well. And I think, too, being in Arizona, just that whole situation, that shit show that happened down there, didn't help Strome at all. They rushed him too much. They thought he was going to be the new face of their franchise and pull them back to relevancy. And clearly, he's just a guy that needed an extra few years to properly develop. He was never really sheltered in Arizona. It's a miracle that Clayton Keller's turned out as good as he has for that franchise, because kind of the same thing. He was never sheltered. He was literally thrown into the fire and said, sink or swim. But no, like
on top of that Protoss kid and McMichael are looking pretty good too. So they're getting Tom Wilson's kind of turned it around, so they're getting a lot more contributions throughout. But it's nice. But they've also got, like, I more meant those young guys that are, obviously sometimes it takes a bit to get used to this league, like you've seen with Strome. But I mean, that Protas kid was like a 3rd-round pick, and he's really starting to show that he can really hang in the top 6.
That's just it. Like McMichael's a 1st-round pick, and way back in 2017 or 2018, I believe, was his draft. But Protoss, like, to get a 3rd-rounder come on this early for you is pretty impressive, and just shows that the Caps drafting and scouting teams have actually done pretty good work here. So, to your Tom Wilson point, though, like, quick sidetrack on this one. We'll just kind of snap all around on our topics here, but what do you guys think of the rumor of Tom Wilson possibly being named to Team Canada for the Four Nations face-off?
I came up with my own little list like a week ago, and there was definitely 5 or 6 names that I bounced around for like the final 3 spots that I wasn't totally sure on for Team Canada, but I didn't have Tom Wilson in that mix. I like Tom Wilson as a player. I'm not buying into him on Team Canada, but if they're looking to build it a certain way, obviously he brings a completely different element than almost anybody that's going to be on that roster. So that's kind of where I sit on that.
I mean, we kind of had this similar discussion probably last year. I don't know if we did, but the hockey world did, with Adam Lowry and kind of how well he played last year. Like, kind of like a bigger 4th line, kind of more physical presence player. So, like, we'll see where it goes. I'm not sure if it's really even necessary to have Wilson or Lowry on there, but if, like, I was making my roster today, I doubt one or either of them would be on there.
I think my point of view of it is, and obviously the issue is Canada's GM and like their head people that are going to put this team together are going to do it so politically that they're going to kind of analyze how the other 3 teams are going to be put together and pick apart weaknesses of both the Canadian possible weaknesses in Canada's team and the other teams. I cannot overlook the fact that the States have both Kachucks, and outside of a guy like McKinnon, Canada doesn't really have that kind of bulldog type player after McKinnon in terms of, like, especially what would be their top 12. That'd be the only argument I see for Wilson. But, like, go ahead.
One guy that I had in my mix that maybe not on quite a level that the Kachucks are, but somebody that kind of likes to mix it up, and I kind of think he's got a shot, and maybe you guys will disagree, but Brandon Hagel on Tampa Bay, I think he's off to a pretty good start this year. I think if he can stay the course and kind of fulfill a bigger role with the Lightning this year, I think he's got a legit shot at this team.
I like that for PK too, because he's a really good penalty killer. And, like, outside of a guy like Mark Stone, Crosby, Marner, like, Hagel's one of those guys that just does the dirty work.
Yeah, that's where I'm kind of coming from on it.
But then, I mean, Josh, I don't know if you have anything to add with the Wilson part, but the other big news too with this whole Team Canada roster thing was, did you guys hear the Darnell Nurse coming out of Edmonton that there's an executive apparently saying Darnell Nurse should be on Team Canada because they have too many offensive defensemen already on the team?
I don't
Well,
really know what to say there.
yeah, other than like hard pass for me, but I mean the executives, I guess, not wrong if he's thinking that Darnell Nurse would be good for having a non-offensive defenseman, but he doesn't really add much else. Like, I don't know, like 4 or 5 years ago, you could probably have this conversation, right? Like right when he signed that deal, but he hasn't really. He doesn't do much. Like, there's so
Like,
many. I could probably name 10 defensemen off the top of my head that I think would be better to have on there.
I get where they come from in terms of clear guys out the front of your net and just be basically have guys not want to go into your corner. But he's such a, like you said, he's such a liability with the puck. And Canada's whole identity is going to be get their forwards the puck and let them go, just clear their zone as quick as possible because their goaltending is just looking like shit. But we don't even need to touch on that one. But like you said, and especially the top 4 defensemen is probably already set for Canada with Makar, Taves, Theodore Petrangelo. Like, Canada can bring a top 4 of literally 2 pairs that played together all the time. So the chemistry is built in already.
Yeah, and all those guys are fine defensively too. Like, I don't.
And they're all sneaky strong. Like, yeah, they're not big bullies, but they don't shy away from the physical play either.
No.
Do you guys have Bush on your team? I don't, and a lot of people do. I like Bouchard, but I just don't think he's the right fit for this team. Not in the role that he would be in.
I can see him as a 7th defenseman, PP2 specialist. But I think you have to bring a guy like either Mackenzie Weegar or Aaron Ekblad for that third line right shot D. Or Noah Dobson even over Bouchard.
Yeah, I agree with Brock. He would be my 7th, like 8th guy on the list probably. Just like I don't know, Makar, Theodore,
Petro,
like you're that spot that
and
Bouchard would sell in is kind of taken by guys that, in my opinion, fill.
And I think Josh Morrissey's also a lock on this team too.
Yeah,
I was just gonna bring
I think
his name up.
the top 4 there that we said already in Morrissey, I think are all locks. Well, yeah. Makar already is he not? Was he not part of this?
Yeah, Makar is the only true lock on defense.
Yeah, but yeah, the other 4 I think are locks.
Yeah, like, well, I don't know. Taze's play this year is kind of like he's probably done enough to like be on the team, but if there was more depth on that left side for Canada, Devon Toews might be in trouble of not making it. His play this year hasn't been the greatest. The puck is down, and the 24-25 season is underway, which means the quest for the Stanley Cup starts now. Get in on all the action at Draftkings Sportsbook, an official sportsbook betting partner of the NHL. Whether you're a first-time bettor just looking for a simple pick team to win, or whether you're a seasoned bettor looking to do parlays and up your game, you get it all done at Draftkings Sportsbook app. And if you're new to DraftKings, listen up. New customers bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown
Gambling
is yours.
problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/ice.
Yeah, I'd like to see that improve for many reasons.
I think everything's got to improve when we get some bodies back.
Yeah, it's the issue is with that though is Colorado hasn't had a lot of that much injuries on the back end. It's all been up front.
Yeah, I guess.
But maybe he's dealing with a nagging injury that he just doesn't want to that he can just play through. Who knows?
I mean, he was injured there for like a couple games.
Yeah,
That first game back, he looked a little rough, and from what I've seen, it hasn't been kind of what we've expected. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's something lingering there a little bit, and maybe they're just waiting for more kind of forwards to get back to maybe have him maybe like rest out a little bit because there's just more better players all around.
Yeah, because I think Malinsky, you could probably start handing, like, if you need to sit Tays, you could probably hand Malinsky a good chunk of those minutes. He's shown he's more than capable to, mind you, like, he might get exposed at times, but you might as well give it a shot and make sure Tays is rested now.
I don't think it would hurt him in like a smaller sample size till Taves gets healthy if that's what's the matter.
No, it's
Especially this early because it'd be in the later part of the year, I think, is where Malinsky would start to get exposed just because of like the season grind, like the length of for someone like that. But I think earlier in the year, he it wouldn't be as hard on him.
Yeah, I don't know about that because he had all of last year with between going up and down with the Eagles and the Avalanche. Like, it's not like he's fresh out of college playing here. Like, he's had a full professional year, so it's it being early, like you said, is probably the biggest thing out of all this. Like, it looks kind of bleak when you look at the standings in Colorado's second last in the Central Division. But then you look at their man games lost this so far this year, which is so extensive, who they've lost to, and the fact that they're still within striking distance of the middle, like that third place in the Central. Like, Makar, Rantanen, and McKinnon have done enough to drag this team through these injuries.
They could be that team that like finishes, 7th, 8th, like one of those two wild card teams, and that team that finishes first is like, fuck, are you for real? But it just could be the way it goes just because of like just the injuries they're dealing with and the goaltending they're not getting. Like until that all gets sorted out and kind of settled, right? But
Noonan's at least helped in the goaltending department.
Reminiscent of Vegas last year.
Yeah, just
Like
injuries.
the same kind of thing. Like the defending Cup champs, get in at the number 8 seed. I know the Avs aren't defending Cup champs, but I think a lot of teams still at full capacity don't want to meet the Avs in round 1.
Especially if the Avs go into the playoffs with their full healthy roster.
That's what I mean.
Well, speaking of that, I read somewhere today that it sounds like Landy had maybe not a minor setback, but a more significant setback recently. Not sure how true that is, but I mean, he was on the ice and now he's not on the ice at all, and he's just been kind of doing stuff in the gym. Probably it's never a good sign when things go a little backwards, but
no, but
they're probably also being very cautious. But
yeah,
that's why I'm like not holding my breath on seeing him at all this year. Maybe
I think this is the make or break year. Like, if he doesn't play at all this year, like try to make some type of comeback, I don't think it'll ever really happen for him.
No.
Which kind of sucks, but I think too, just for for the room in Colorado, they would need to establish like who the next true leader of the team is, because right now maybe that is part of why like Colorado's had some struggles these last 2.5 seasons or 2 and a bit seasons, is because you don't have Landeskog's presence in that dressing room 24/7. It's kind of constantly been in flux. Like, yeah, you have some leaders in there and some personalities, but you need that guy, that glue guy that's going to pull everyone together, that just steps up and says, that's enough.
Yeah, they're really missing that, especially now with EJ gone too.
Yeah. Then I'm curious to see how the locker room chemistry kind of, if anything, changes when Nichushkin comes back off the ice. So that could be a big make or break on the season too.
He's back with the boys and practicing, so at least he's got some time before game time actually starts.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's great though that he's back, because I mean, I think the boys can get over it because they need him.
That they do, but it's also, you just pray that he doesn't relapse again, because like, if it happens, he's done in the league. Like, he's going back to Russia and finishing his hockey career there. But it's, for it to just happen 3 straight playoffs in a row would just be devastating.
Yeah, another thing I won't hold my breath on either. I mean, it's happened so many times, right? It's just like I couldn't have full faith in it not happening again.
That's fair. But to your point of like the Avs being sneaking into that 7-8 spot in the conference, they're also a team where, as they get healthy, they could rattle off 12, 13, 14 straight wins all of a sudden. And next thing you know, they're right there with like the Jets for the top of the division.
Yeah.
Like, this team is it's such an enigma at times, because they just look complete dog shit, because you have McKinnon out there doing whatever he like, just going full force, bull in a china shop, doing everything he can. Makar, at times you can just see him trying to do everything and he overdoes it and makes some defensive mistakes. And the issue is Rantanen doesn't always show up. So it's hard for just 3 guys. Middlestad's in there this year, but it's hard for just 3 or 4 guys to carry a team, especially with how good the rest of the Centrals played so far this season, barring Colorado and Nashville.
Yeah.
The sights, the sounds, and the memories of live-action NHL are unbeatable. Don't miss a moment with Gametime. Gametime Picks offers curation that makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever event you're looking to attend. All-in pricing allows you to feature the total upfront price point with no surprise fees at checkout. Again, view your seat and you can determine whether it's worth the price of admission or not. Lowest price is guaranteed every time, or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible custom service policy in ticketing industry with Gametime's ticket coverage. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code THPN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code THPN for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. Kind of stick in the Central here, though. Like, what do you guys think of the Minnesota Wild off to their hot start? I mean, yeah, we kind of shit on the Jets a little, said they'd regress from last year, but we're not overly surprised they started as hot as they did. They still have a decent roster, but Minnesota, who saw this coming? 7-1-2 or something like that.
Yeah.
Kirill the Thrill.
Yeah, Kirill's got to be the very early on front runner for the Hart right now. I forget what I was gonna say.
I'll come back to you, but
Yeah.
it's how much of this too is Marco Rossi. I mean, here's a kid that had so many setbacks and is starting to finally get comfortable in professional hockey. He might be that number one center that the Wild have never had.
Yeah, him, like Boldy has had a pretty like lights out start to the year too. Faber is kind of proven that what kind of guy he's going to be. And then you just got Spurgeon back, he's missed so much time the last few years too. And then, I mean, one of the bigger ones right now is like Gustafsson has kind of refound his form from 2 years ago too. All still early in the year, but I mean, those are all good signs for a team that really was missing that last year.
Obviously, Minnesota being a rival, and this is what I was going to say earlier when I forgot. Minnesota being a rival, like, you always want to beat them, but it is kind of nice to see them get back up on their feet right now, I will say, instead of them being down in the dumps, which I kind of thought they might be this year. Maybe not San Jose dumps, but another down year for them, and to see them back up and being a competitive team again is kind of exciting for the rivalry, I think.
100% on that, but I can't get over this roster and think they're any more than a 1 or 2 round playoff team at best, because outside of the guys you mentioned there, Justin, like, who does this roster have? They got Ryan Hartman playing in top 6. He's a poor man's Tom Wilson. Like, you got, like, they have good NHL players, but they don't have. They have a mix that works right now. I'm not sold on it being this big thing that, like, unless Kaprizov just stays in God mode, I can see the Wild easily slipping here as the calendar gets deeper into the season. Like, they're doing great, and like you said, Trav, it's great for the rivalry of the Wild and the Avalanche that Minnesota's off to this great start, but I'm not putting as much stock in as maybe some people are with this team.
I wouldn't be surprised if they fall off here in the next couple months.
Like, and again, they could easily surprise and go make the playoffs. They could also completely shit the bed here because you're still relying on a goalie that's had one good season and then a bunch of mediocre seasons in Gustafsson. And you're relying on an aging defensive core that's basically being carried by Faber for the most part. Brodin's there for veteran, Spurgeon's veteran. But those guys, like you said, Spurgeon's injury prone, and Brodin's the age is going to catch up with him at some point too. So I don't know. It's great to see them off to such a great start, but is this just one of those kind of October illusions where the team, they just seem to click right away, right out of training camp, and took advantage of some teams still trying to figure stuff out? Is all I'm like. I think that's more the truth to the Wild season than anything else.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with that.
November is a make or break month for a lot of teams over the last number of years. I think we're going to get an answer in November. I think if they're still if they have a good November, I think at the very least they're a playoff team this year. But yeah, November is going to be the telltale here, I think. If they slip up in November, it's going to be tough because there's going to be a lot of teams nipping at their heels.
See, the only thing with the whole November Trav I find is we've had recent proof of teams can be dog shit for the first 2 months and still make a turnaround on the season. The Blues did it in 2019. The Oilers did it last year. Like you said, it's November is a big month for a lot of teams to really establish kind of where they're going to be for the rest of the season. I just maybe kind of push it more towards that World Junior roster freeze. Just before Christmas type area there, I think is when I think it's the deadline you have to start looking at teams and evaluating, okay, you're a playoff team, you're a playoff contender, you're just out of it. That's where I see the deadline kind of pushed to now, is that week before Christmas. That's when you really know what teams are. I just think right now November's way too early still to even tell, especially with how dangerous the Central is going to look once a few teams figure out their shit.
Yeah, I always wondered why like the November like Thanksgiving, U.S. Thanksgiving was like the big kind of like date for how teams were looking, because there's still like 60 games, 55 games after that.
Part of that's just the numbers play into it, because Gary Bettman wants parity in the league and it's false parity. So with that loser point, that a team like Minnesota is going to feast on the loser point when they start actually losing games, because they're built to just take those 1-1 games, those 2-2 games into overtime, and then they just pray that a guy like Faber, Kaprizov can win it for them. And if they don't, well, they got the 1 point. Like I think we touched on it last year. The NHL needs to change their point system to reward teams that actually win in regulation more, and actually punish teams that want to just try to build on that loser point.
Yeah, we did damn near a whole pod on this last year about what we think what direction they should go in.
Yeah, I think we were all agreeing that like some type of either just get rid of the loser point altogether, or a 3-2-1 point system.
Yeah, or it needs to be addressed. I think is the kind of the consensus we were all at.
Yeah, it's just I think that's why that whole November thing plays in, especially with the media people, because they look at the numbers and the percentage of teams that when they're out of the playoffs, when they sit in a certain spot come that US Thanksgiving, there's only a small percent that make a big run and actually can turn their season around from there on. So again, I blame more a lot of it. It's just there's so much false parity in the NHL. And yeah, we don't need to get into the point system again. That's beating a dead horse. So I think it's just one, like, might as well touch on the last Central here too. Like the Jets, I kind of said it. We probably weren't going to be surprised with a start like this, but fuck, they went 8-0 to start the season before dropping one to the Leafs. And you look at their blue line outside of Morrissey, they kind of do it by committee.
Neil Pionk's having a pretty good year so far, but he's also on a contract year.
He's also proven though, like he had one good year. He got trade out to Winnipeg and just proved that he's not a top pairing guy. Because he had a big year with the Rangers.
Is that where he came from?
Yeah, he was part of the Trouba trade.
Okay. I thought he was drafted there.
No. He was, because I remember at the time I thought to myself, like, that's not a bad swap, Pionk for Trouba, but Pionk's also he's almost like a Sam Girard type, where like if he doesn't evolve his game to some degree defensively, he's he's a liability because he's not going to overtake Morrissey as the top PP guy on that Winnipeg blue line. But
yeah, speaking of contract years, Ehlers is lighting it up too. Like he was a guy that was in trade conversations like all summer. It seemed like.
yeah, I guess we could go back to our last episode with the contract, like talking about Rantanen and Marner's contracts, and throw Ehlers into that mix too, because I mean he's not quite on their level, but fuck yeah, he's making the Jets really think. But it's not just him up front; it's Nino Niederreiter. Like the Jets are basically gonna have to pick between those two guys because I don't think they're gonna have the cap to keep both.
I have a hard time seeing how they're going to keep Ehlers.
I know he's off to a very piss poor start in the OHL this year, but I think if you're the Jets, you keep Ehlers because he has that high offensive ceiling, and you have a guy like Barlow who could become a Niederreiter replacement, just with the style of play that Barlow's going to have to play and transform his game to be effective in the NHL is exactly kind of what Niederreiter brings. So like the Jets do have they have Barlow, they have Yager now, they have Brad Lambert. I think you have to pay Ehlers for the high offensive ceiling and then fill in the holes with those young guys on ELCs.
Yeah, and I mean, Perfetti's off to a nice start too. Like 11 points in 12 games. Like, I don't know how much of this continues all year for them. Like, I think they regress. Like, it's obviously not sustainable going 8-1 or 11-1. Sorry, is what they're at now. But it's probably some of these guys are going to regress back to where their averages usually sit. Like, I think a guy like Connor's probably going to likely score like this all year.
I think he breaks 50 this year. So I don't think he's done it yet in his career.
Yeah. And then, I think your guys like your Ehlers and your like Pionks and Perfettis will slow down a bit. We don't know what Perfetti is just yet in the NHL. Like he's still kind of in that period of like, this is like the show me period, right? So I like what he's done so far though.
Maybe that's the player that the Jets watch the most is what does Perfetti do this year? Because that could actually have a make or break on what they're willing to pay Ehlers. Because like if Perfetti performs to a certain level, the Jets can play real hardball with Ehlers and basically say, if you want to stay here, this is our number and we're not going past it. Because literally they let him walk for nothing and you let Perfetti take his spot up the lineup, and you bring in a guy like Brandon Yager, who's a high offensive player in junior, and kind of fill it in that way. But what do you guys think of Connor Hellebuck going for a rare feat of 3 straight seasons with at least a .920 save percentage? If he does it this year, he's joining the likes of like the Hasek, the Brodeur, the Wall, those goalies to do it.
It's impressive, no doubt, but it's tainted by his performance in last year's playoffs. Nobody is forgetting that. Like every stat that I see of him, the comments are filled with last year's playoffs. Now, I mean, if the Jets go deep this year and he, if the Jets go deep this year, he's going to be a large part of that. Maybe he can redeem himself. It's impressive. I'm not taking anything away from that. I'm just saying right now, when it matters most, people remember that he got lit up in
That's
5
2 playoffs in a row too. That
yeah,
he's been kind of shoddy. Like, not all his fault, obviously. Like,
No.
there's a lot that goes on to it, but I agree with Trav. Like, the regular season numbers are no doubtedly impressive. It's just like, cool. All right, now like let's see these, kind of godlike numbers in the playoffs, because all these guys that he's in contention with have done it. Though I will argue that those guys that have done it had way better teams in front of them. But maybe not, because the Jets have been really good these like last year, and now we have this year. So like it's kind of like it's almost it's like kind of a coin flip at the same time too.
Maybe the best way to put it is he'd be the first goalie in the salary cap era to do it, I think, in the like 3 consecutive 920s. And maybe that's what makes the more impressive for him, is just, again, the playoffs are the playoffs, but like in a salary cap era where your team's hamstrung by how much they can spend on the guys in front of you, and you're posting 3 straight years of at least a 920 save percentage, that puts you in some pretty elite class.
Oh yeah.
But what is it with Canadian teams and being afraid of the playoffs? They either just don't make them, or when they get there, they completely fall apart.
Bettman doesn't want them there.
I mean, like, Edmonton was the exception last year, but like, how many years the Leafs have had? How many years of it's their year, first round exit? The Jets.
Leafs are in a class of their own.
That's the Leafs have had what, 2 or 3 bright years since '67. They had the early 90s and then the early 2000s, and then after that they've just been dog shit.
Yeah.
Until now,
pretty much.
Like,
yeah, pretty much. Other than an improvement in the regular season over the last decade.
Yeah, setting records that way.
Black Friday and Cyber Monday are just weeks away, which means you're weeks away from amazing deals you find only once a year. Except with Raycon. Because with Raycon, you get an amazing deal on premium audio every day of the year. But that doesn't mean they're not having any sales for Black Friday or Cyber Monday. Far from it. They're actually doubling down on their amazing value by offering our viewers up to 30% site-wide. A deal you'll appreciate every day, Raycon's Everyday Earbuds. Especially if you haven't checked out their latest model, which includes plenty of new features that make them even more of a must-have for any audio lover. For example, they now feature a 32-hour battery life and multi-point connectivity that lets you pair with 2 devices at once. Raycon's Everyday Earbuds also come with active noise cancellation. It's a must-have feature when all you want to do is listen to your music and tune out the world, but one that can be difficult to find at an accessible price point, until now. Because that's another thing. Although Raycon's quality rivals some of the biggest names in premium audio, Raycon starts at just half the price as the other guys. So they're already an incredible deal, even before you factor in the Black Friday Cyber Monday offer of up to 30% off site-wide. Raycon's Everyday Earbuds are also available in a variety of vibrant colors. So you don't have to just go with the standard black or white earbuds sticking out of your ear. Pick your favorite color, change it up. With this deal, grab a few of them and you can change up a different color every day. Now's the perfect time to scoop them up, and if you haven't already, and don't worry, if you're not as impressed as I am, Raycon offers a 30-day happiness guarantee, so you really can't lose. It's time to save big for Black Friday Cyber Monday. Go to buyraycon.com/THPN today and get up to 30% off site-wide. That's right, you'll get up to 30% off everything on Raycon's website when you go to buyraycon.com/THPN.
But hey, they're hockey's most valuable franchise. Like, I don't know if I know this is an area you guys don't pay as much attention about as maybe I do, but it's pretty impressive how the NHL franchise values came out. Every franchise is over $1 billion in valuation. which is so 32 teams, everyone's over $1 billion valued. And yet this league still finds ways to handicap itself in making real money.
Yeah, that's a weird thing I saw with this. Like, I don't divulge much into it, but seeing how much these are worth, like seeing how much, that Tampa owner sold like majority shares in the franchise for, and kind of how little it seems that kind of goes back into like the players, maybe like the salary cap, things like that. Like if you have 32 teams, one that just came into the league are all over $1 billion. Like, why aren't we seeing more? Like, kind of, I don't even know how much it like affects like the salary cap wise, but it seems like there needs to be more of the pie shelved out to some of these things. Or am I just completely missing the mark on this?
No, you're close there. I think part of this, comes into look what kind of surrounds a lot of these NHL buildings now. And because like the teams own their buildings, like when you look at a football stadium, it's just a wide vast of parking lot because everyone goes and they have their whole tailgate parties. When you look at this, baseball has such a unique history of their stadiums being very vintage. There's not a lot of extra amenities around them outside of like some of the newer ones being built. And like, mind you, basketball and hockey, a lot of cities that have one and the same share the same building, but it's the real estate around those buildings that's, I think, is where a lot of this value comes in. Because like you take Scotiabank Arena, there's how much stuff around it that the Leafs influence or even own to a degree. And then there's also just the amount of exposure that these brands get. Like it does play, you are right in the fact that this just shows hockey is actually building and exploding in a lot of different markets, that these brands are all worth over $1 billion. But the fact is too that we're still not even at teams still can't even spend $100 million on a payroll. So it is, again, like I kind of put in the comments of our notes that like why are Bettman and the owners so conscious about how much money teams spend in terms of players and in terms of stuff when every franchise is valued at over $1 billion. Like every owner could turn around today, find someone to buy it, and they're walking away with at least $1 billion in their pocket.
Yeah, I don't know. It's insane to me a little bit. Like when I saw that list come out, I wouldn't believe that like every team was worth that much. Like all 32 teams. I was looking at like the list from 10 years ago, just like as a reference. Like Florida was worth $140 million. Now they're over $1 billion.
Yeah. It's part of the issue is that it does, to me, this also goes into that these teams have put in the work and the effort to build their brands in their communities, because a lot of those southern states don't have that ingrained hockey mindset like a lot of Canadians do. And so these teams have to put in the work to get their brand exposure. And the fact that in 10 years, Florida's gone from 100 million to $1 billion is pretty impressive, and just shows the amount of, like, mind you, winning has a lot to do with that, but also too, it's just constantly the brand exposure. Like obviously if you look at the NBA, the Raptors are probably going to be one of the lower teams just because of that dynamic in terms of where they're located. but they're still doing a really good job of just brand exposure. I don't know if you guys have anything else to add on that or any of the other topics we touched on here.
No, not really.
All right. Trav?
No, I don't got much. Actually, one thing kind of just something I read that I definitely agree with. I read that the NHL has had their lowest TV viewing in like a number of years this year, and it's a large part due to the blackouts that are put on games. And the post was kind of saying like the NHL really needs to look at removing blackouts, and I agree. I can't tell you how many times a blackout has like stopped me from watching a game that I would probably watch.
Yeah. Well, watch legally. Because, I mean, I bet there's probably a lot of fans that watch it, just they're not getting it legally.
Yeah.
But I think that's going to change. Go ahead.
It's all like kind of like geographic where the issues are, right? Because like since I live in like the middle of absolutely nowhere, like I buy the Sportsnet package, I get everything. Like I don't have a regional blackout with it. But then some people will say that they do with like probably the same package that I have because they live, I don't know, in Toronto or in Montreal or close to it.
Try watching like a Thursday night Leaf game because I think those are TSN's nights.
That might be a thing because I don't like.
Because I think in Canada, a lot of it is the TSN Sportsnet conflicts in terms of because TSN gets regional games, Sportsnet has the national broadcasting rights.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's weird. Like I'll get ones that'll say outside Sens region, and it'll work. And usually the Sens are all TSN.
Yeah, I think some of it too just depends on like how a Sportsnet wants to parlay things to their to the audience,
right?
But
yeah, blackout like it shouldn't be a thing if you're paying for something to watch. Like
I think in 2 years, I think the 2026 season is when the Sportsnet's national TV rights are up. The NHL is either going to get a buttload of money come into them for Sportsnet to keep those rights, or we're going to see probably Amazon take over the broadcasting rights in Canada. And then like we've seen, and if you look, there are teams doing this. Like Dallas has done it. I think Vegas, there's maybe one or two other US teams. Toronto used to do this with Leafs TV. Teams need to take their billion-dollar valuations and invest in themselves and say, all right, we're gonna basically put together a team of 20, 25 employees that are their sole purpose is to just broadcast our games to our local audience. And then you don't run into a lot of different regional blackouts and anything like that. And then you have your national broadcasts, but teams need, and it's not even actually, don't even broadcast on TV almost, stream it.
Yeah.
Go through your website and stream it. Like that's what
like they could make an app, like, you know.
Yeah. And that's simple. Where this is gonna head eventually, I think, especially with Amazon coming in. But this is probably the biggest area where the NHL is so far behind sports like basketball and football. Is just like how they market and how they do their TV. But other than that, NHL looks to be in a good spot financially. The teams are all doing good. We've got some storylines this year to watch out for as the season goes on, and hopefully we get a few more for next week when we return Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Catch you all next week.